Okay, I think we're going to get us kicked off. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. Again, this is the ProLink HFA product webinar series that we host on a monthly basis. And we have been focusing on our development and tax credit allocation modules so far this year in this series. And we're going to be focusing today on reporting tax credits with those 8609s and 8610s. This is a 30-minute webinar. So go ahead, Sarah, and I will move on to our agenda for today. We're going to have just a couple slides to cover ProLink real quick before I hand it off to Sarah, and then she will be covering the demos today for 8609s and then 8610s. I'm Bree Kruder. I'm the Executive Vice President for ProLink. I oversee our customer success department and then also our sales and marketing team. So I'm heavily involved with our existing clients and then helping to communicate our products and services to prospective clients as well. And I'm joined by Sarah Supernaut, who's our customer success rep and trainer, and she's also highly involved with our existing clients and implementations providing training. Sarah, you can go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, so just a quick coverage on ProLink. Many of you know us well, our existing clients tuning in. So we have been in the affordable housing industry for over 25 years at this point, supporting our state housing finance agencies as well as tax credit syndicators and investors and developers with different products. We're focusing on ProLink HFA today, which is our solution for our housing finance agencies. Our goal is really to support our clients from the beginning, like kind of origination part of these deals, these affordable housing deals, all the way through ongoing asset management and compliance and connecting the parties along the way. So as much efficiency as we can bring between your partners, your developers, your property managers, owner agents, our agencies, and then, of course, investors and syndicators. The more we can bring efficiency between those working relationships, the better we feel this industry can operate and leverage what we have to work with here. So that is our goal. We are made up of technologists first and foremost, with a lot of tenure built into ProLink at this point, in industry expertise and experience onboarding the many clients that we do support today. You can go ahead and advance. Yeah. This is just a quick picture of the agencies that we support with ProLink HFA specifically. So you can see here we have 18 housing finance agencies. We also support 2 supportive services agencies. Some of our newer housing agencies that are going through implementation this year are Pennsylvania Housing, Hawaii. We're also working with Maryland and City of Chicago, which are ongoing from last year. So thank you very much to everyone for being our clients. We appreciate your partnership. And this is just a quick slide covering our main modules. So like I mentioned earlier, we've been focusing this year on covering our development and tax credit allocation modules, really kind of deep diving in this webinar series in those 2 areas. We also offer a very robust asset management and compliance module, which we will cover. We have covered in this webinar series and will certainly be covering in future webinars. But we are focused through the summer on Dev and TCA for now. So thank you for tuning in for those. Okay. Sarah, do you want to take over on this slide or would you like me to continue with this one?
Oh, no, I can go ahead and talk about it.
Okay.
That's totally fine. I will take over now.
Great.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This year's webinars are based on questions that we receive from our current customers to get a little more information about various things our system does that they may not have a lot of experience using that they want to implement at some point. And so as Bree had said, our first quarter is talking about like our tax credit allocation module and what that does, then we'll be moving on to the dev module in June through September. So there's certain questions that have come up during our monthly business reviews with our customers and our clients, or maybe a support ticket that you've entered. So a lot of our information comes from questions you've asked. So if you have any other burning questions, please feel free to forward them via support ticket or email. And that's something that perhaps we can cover in future sessions for you. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is 8609 to ProLink HFA. And for those of you, I think I've worked with a lot of people attending this webinar. I'm Sarah Supernaw. I've worked here for about 16 years, and I've been working, my focus is on training and customer success and support. And so I'm going to share with you what you can do in ProLink HFA with your 8609s and how that's going to kind of filter down into your 8610 reporting. So the way that our 8609 and 8610 information does work in ProLink HFA, a lot of the information that we provide on the 8609s is populated for information that you're going to enter on your tax credit allocation buildings as you go through your application process with your pro formas, with your cost certifications, etc. That information gets populated at some point, generally before you do go to lease up and rent up. And so once you've allocated those and you've submitted, you're ready to submit that information, you can use the 8609 functionality to capture all that data that has already been put into the ProLink HFA system. Then once you've entered like your 8609 data, your Schedule A data, you will be able to pull that information into your yearly 8610 reporting, because that's going to bring information from the 8609s you've already created and any Schedule A's that you may have added to your tax credit allocation deal. And once all those things are populated in the 8610, you're able to generate those IRS forms and packages from ProLink HFA and submit them to whoever you need to. You might be one of those agencies that does work with other agencies within your state to where you just have a portion of what the state needs to report. And so you would just pull in all your data for your 8610s and submit that to whoever's overseeing all the 8610s for your agencies and other separate agencies you might have. So generally, when your construction is complete and you're ready to provide the allocation, you can initiate the tax form 8609 in ProLink HFA. And so what we do is we kind of make sure that you have consciously advanced that deal to the stage of 8609 application feasibility. So that's the only time you have access to create the 8609 from a programmatic standpoint. And this is what it looks like with the information populated from the system. That blue font that you see comes directly from ProLink HFA. You can manually update these fields on the record in ProLink HFA, and also if you need to sign the forms manually and scan those as a PDF, you can do that as well. So there's various different forms, or I'm sorry, there's different credit types in the system, and depending on what you populate in the system based on what your TCA cycle type is going to dictate which credit type form gets populated. So I start with my personal favorite for no reason other than this is what I always create with my test data. When you have your 9% competitive deal, you would update the 9% construction area in that edit TCA building. And some of this data, specifically the 8609 basis and 8609 credit, as well as your place in service date, that's going to populate on the 8609 when you click add 8609, just so you know. And you can see here that some of this information has come directly from the building. It's the address of the building that you're going to see here. The name and address of housing credit agency is part of our config settings that are customized to your agency's settings as well. Then you have owner information that you fill out on the deal that gets populated in here along with their 10 number, and the bin comes in as well. So this information comes directly from the edit TCA building and this information as well. If you want to edit or add any information, like you want to update your eligible basis percentage, you can do that here and save this record before generating the 8609. And kind of this, the way we do it and the programmatic functionality of what we're doing happens regardless of what kind of credit type you're using, right? And in this example we have here, it shows that the date of allocation is in 2024. And the building was also placed in service in 2024. That's like easy peasy, perfect world, but I know not everybody does that. You'd also have, if you have a 4% tax exempt, again, you would populate some of this information here. That's what's going to get pulled into the 8609. So if you want to defer your first year, that information is going to be pulled into the 8609, but you have to manually populate that date of allocation in case that you've gone ahead and you're going to defer the tax credits for the next year. But again, this information would be populated here. You have your place in service date because you have about 2 years. So we can have like our date, our building was placed in service, and you can have the date of allocation like back in 2019, but it took you that long to get it actually placed in service. Some of this will automatically update based on this information. And then you have the option to select that checkbox on the Ed 8609 screen before generating that tax form. Sometimes you might have two 8609s for one deal. That's okay. If you have partial acquisition and partial construction, then you would just set those credit types when you create the 8609s. Same thing with 4% tax exempt and acquisition. You could have 82 8609s for that. And these are going to pull from whether this is acquisition, that's going to pull from this information, or whether it's 4%, then it would pull from this information. So we have options to cover pretty much all the bases, including state, but we're going to get to that. If at any point you have to add additional credits on a building, you can do that. And that's going to get added to the maximum housing credit dollar amount allowable when you create that 8609. So you can see here we have the 8609 credits 80,000, the additional 10,000 that's going to show up on the 8609 is $90,000. So in the event that you have a lot of buildings and you have to create a lot of 8609s, and a lot of them are going to have the same percentages and credit amounts, you can use Smart Docs. If your agency currently creates, has huge projects with tons of buildings, you can utilize Smart Docs in order to map a lot of this stuff, so you can manually enter that information and then just send that Smart Docs up to ProLinkHFA, and that's going to stub out all those edit 8609 screens that we talked about based on the information that you put in here. So that's an easy way, or an easier way, to get that 8609 data in the system and create those records. So when you get to 8610 time, all that stuff's already in there for you, and you have populated a massive amount of data just using Smart Docs and ProLink HFA. And if you have any questions about how to use that, let us know. We do have a couple of agencies that are currently using this method and working on creating an awesome form. And I know one person in particular is currently working on an 8609 Smart Docs for her agency, but I'm not going to name check her, but she knows who she is. So we also have an option to capture state tax credits for reporting. You may have reporting you have to do for your state that the numbers are a little bit separate than what you would populate on an 8609 per se. If for some reason you have that and you do populate the state data in your deal, we can use Smart Docs to provide a customized form to pull in that data from the system. We worked with Kansas Housing to create a form similar to this, where they pull in their federal income tax housing and then their state amount that they want to show to whoever they need to report to. So I'm going to show you what that looks like real quick. This is one of our Smart Docs that we have. And what we did is we have a whole mapping tab, which is what's under the hood. That's where all the data gets pulled into this Excel document. And then we have the option to select different bins for whatever you want to populate it with. And then once you select a bin, it's going to update with the correct bin. If your county data was different, it would show there. And your different dates of allocation of place in service. And this is just an example of us customizing the Excel form to show the data. And then they can just save this, print it off, and send it to whoever they need to. So if that's something your agency does, you're interested in learning more about how to do it, just reach out to us and we can talk about how you can create a Smart Docs just for your specific state reporting. So now we're going to talk about 8610s and how all the 8609 data that we just talked about filters down into your 8610. In ProLink, this is kind of it's a utility. And if you are doing 8609s and you are allocating credits and whatnot, you are going to at some point have to submit the 8610. So most of the information on the slide is very much your standard IRS vernacular and your verbiage, and I'm not going to read it to you unless you can't sleep. Then at that point, I can absolutely do that for you. But this document is going to be used to pull in all your allocation data for current and previous years based on different factors on when the allocation was made, when the 8609 was issued, and we're going to talk about that. In some states, as we mentioned before, you have multiple housing credit agencies and you have to coordinate to file that 8610, but at the very least, you will be able to generate all your 8609s in one big PDF package to submit to whoever you need to submit to at that point. So in ProLinkHFA, this is under our utilities, and I believe that most of you currently using ProLinkHFA understand how to find this and where to go. If you have existing forms that haven't been submitted yet, they'll show the tax form status and where have you left that off. And then you can click into an existing one. Or if you want to create a new one for your reporting year, you would click new, and then it's going to pop up with a blank edit tax form 8610, and it'll populate with the most current tax form year. Now, it does have some things that auto-populate. We're going to talk about that on the next slide. So you see, these are some of the fields that automatically populate as soon as you create that 8610. So this line gets populated from our edit TCA cycle. So in this example, I believe this is the 9% cycle that's going to show there. This is the allocations to state that you have to allocate to whoever requests it. That's where that's going to come from. And it's going to sum for all the TCA cycles. I have a cycle year equal to the tax form year. Currently, this is the only one that I think we have in here right now for my test data, but that's how that correlates to the form itself. We also have 7C, which is populated from total return credits on the return credits tab of the edit TCA cycle. So we utilize the tax credit allocation cycles to assign to each deal. So, as you're bringing in deals and you're developing your project and you're going through the life cycle, all that money gets pulled from a specific cycle for each project. And then you can view all the deals that are associated to that tax credit allocation in the tax credit allocation utility. So once you've saved it and it's got some of the basic data that's populated, you'll see additional tabs. And this is where you associate your 8609s and your Schedule A's, right? So once you click on the associated 8609s tab, you can start adding your 8609s that exist in the system to the 8610. So what that's going to do, it's automatically going to bring up your 8609s that were issued in the current tax form year matching by the 8610 is. And so sometimes you may have more, you may have less. If you need to find one from 2023 that you're reporting on a little late, you can do that as well. But it defaults to the current year of the actual tax form. So once you add all those tax forms, they will show up on your associated 8609. So the example I showed, I'd already added a bunch of these, and these are all the ones that for this example, I have popped in here to show that these are going to be associated to the 8610. You also have the option for adding the Schedule A's. Same kind of thing. When you click on the Schedule A tab, you can do the Find Schedule A will pop up. And if you have a Schedule A on your tax credit deal, you're going to be able to select that if you need to add it to the 8610. And it's kind of the same process with the 8609s. You have your Find Schedule A modal pops up. You select which ones you want to add using the checkbox. You add them, and those are going to be added to your 8610. Now, once you've added all this stuff, the system doesn't automatically calculate. Once you've added everything that you need to add your forms as you're going through and developing your form and what you want to implement on this form, you can click the calculate button. And that's going to show, hey, these are the number of 8609s you have that are allocating credit in 2024. This is the number that allocates prior to 2024. And there's specific indicators to which 8609 is going to show up in what field. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. A lot of this does get auto-populated, and we're going to go through what that looks like here in just a second. So 8610, part 1, as we talked about, this is going to be based on the date issued, the date of allocation, and the cycle types of the associated 8609s. So I have this little animation here that's going to show you what the system looks at. First thing it's going to look at is the date issued, then the credit type, and then the date of allocation. And some of the verbiage in here kind of indicates what is going to populate where. But first of all, this is the only deal that we have that has an 8609 where the actual credits were allocated in 2024. That's the 9% specifically. So that's the one that goes in that one. Then we have the other 6 that shows that these credits were allocated prior to 2024. So when you look at the date of allocations here, you can see these were all prior to the current tax form year, which is currently 2024. That's where that number comes from. Then we talk about attributable to tax exempt bonds. We have 3 of those. You can see these are 4% construction, 4% construction, and also acquisition. So those all are going to show up here because this particular acquisition is part of a 4% deal. And mostly it just cares about when these were issued, right? Then the total dollar amount of credits attributable to projects financed by tax exempt bonds. So these are the same 3 that we just talked about that populate here. This just takes the maximum housing credit dollar amount allowable and adds that right there. And so then for your Schedule A, we only have one Schedule A here. So that's where that's at. That's just going to show 1. And then line 6 is going to total how many forms that you currently have attached to the 8610. So some of the fields, 7A, not automatically populated because we don't store that field. This one we talked about earlier that it comes from the tax credit allocation cycle utility. Oh, sorry, I got a little click happy there. And then total return credits. That comes from return credits that you populate on the allocation cycle. That's different than unused credits. So part 10, this is where we talk about 7F. And there's kind of there are some rules on how that's going to work. If an 8610 exists for the year previous, so in this example, 2023, and the amended report checkbox is checked, and line 9 is populated on that 2023 form, it's going to pull in that value to 7F, and then it's going to compare it when we get down to enter the smaller of line 7F or 8C. And that's how the line 9 on the 8610 is going to get populated. This is the 2024 form. So that's what we do for some of the unused credits and where that's going to be placed. We currently don't have a specific area on the tax credit allocation cycle, but if that is a number you can track, we can talk about using a UDF so you always have a place to go to know where that's going to be. But once you have that populated on the previous year, it's going to carry over. So for 7H, we have the maximum housing credit dollar amount allowable when that allocation subject to nonprofit set aside is checked on the 8609s. That's when it's going to populate right here. So once you have all your tax forms associated, you have your 8609 on there, you have your Schedule A's on there, you have saved the record and you're done with everything. This is like, hey, this is all I got. What you're going to do is you're going to hit that Create IRS Form 8610. That's going to actually generate the actual form. And then it's going to bring in all the data that you're seeing on the Edit Tax Form 8610 screen. It's going to take all the data that you saved to the database and populate the form so you can download it, sign it, send it to the IRS or wherever you need to send it. Now, the 8609s kind of get created separately. Once you hit the Create 8609 button, after you've selected all the 8609s that you want to be part of this tax form package, you just click Create 8609s. It's going to bring up a PDF with 1 page for every 8609 that you have. And so then you can download that and save that as your 8609 packet that goes with this 8610. Same thing with the Schedule A's. You select which Schedule A's, and in most cases, it would be all of them. You don't have to select all of them, but in order to get those Schedule A's to display and create. You have to click that checkbox next to which one you want to create. You'll hit create Schedule A's and the PDF is going to generate and you can download it. Again, pulling in information that's already been populated in the system and associated. This is how you can make your 8610 packet with your 8609s and your Schedule A's. And that's all I have for that in case we have any questions. Sam, I'm going to lean on you for that one.
No questions, Sarah.
Okay. If you do have any other questions, again, reach out to us via email or enter a support ticket if you want to talk about using SmartDocs for some of this for your 8609 questions, or if you have some other questions about what the 8610 displays and where that data comes from. Thank you for your time, and I will pass this back over to Bree.
Sarah, thank you. We appreciate your overview. Just a reminder, guys, this webinar series is meant to bring awareness to our users and those who are maybe trying to get to understand more of what functionality is available into ProLink in ProLinkHFA, making you aware of just that. It is not training. We do expect that during our virtual training event, ProLink Tech Live in the fall, that many of these topics will be expanded in more of a training format. But just I wanted to point that out. If you have any questions, because I know this is a lot of information in an overview format, if you have any specific questions, please feel free to submit those in the chat now, and we will follow up with you right after this event, or you can bring it up in your monthly meeting with me and your customer support team. We'd love to hear those questions and feedback, so please do that. And then just a reminder for our next webinar coming up, you'll see some announcements and invitations to register for this event. The registration link has actually been added to the chat just in Zoom right here if you want to go ahead and do that. But we will be focusing our next session on home funding sources in the development module. This will be led by Gina Crouch, who's one of our senior project managers and analysts here at ProLink. Some of the topics that she will be covering is home funding sources in your DEB deals, fiscal year allocation tracking your annual home program funds, and reporting on your home funded development deals. So register today, and we will see you on Wednesday, June 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern time for that event. Thank you again, Sarah, and everyone for attending, and we will see you next time.